well, Starmer survived yesterday, and today he came out fighting, or at least this is his version of it.
I will never walk away from the mandate I was given to change this country. I will never walk away from the people that I'm charged with fighting for. And I will never walk away from the country that I love.
Well, there we are. You can believe that if you want to. I thought the best comment this morning was in the Daily Mail. Jason Groves wrote, just one more puff of wind and he'll be blown over. And maybe something unexpected will happen. What is for certain is that under his leadership, Labour, if you believe the opinion polls, are headed for absolute catastrophe in the Welsh Parliament elections. And frankly, not a lot better in Scotland either. He'll certainly be gone after May the 7th, certainly be gone. And maybe they'll keep him there to carry the can for what's about to come. I suspect there'll be I suspect something will happen. There'll be an event and he'll be gone within a couple of weeks. That's my guess. Let me ask you at home. How long do you think Starmer will last? Tweet hashtag Farage on GB News or email farage@gbnews.com. Well, I'm joined in the studio by my regular panel on Tuesday, Sir Ranul Jayawardena and Joe Phillips. But special guest this evening, I've got somebody who was a cabinet minister in Gordon Brown's government and served with Peter Mandelson. Sean Woodward.
Nigel, good evening.
Now, he was called the Prince of Darkness sort of 25 years ago. And twice he'd been booted out of British politics. He'd gone across to Brussels as a commissioner, but he was called back after the financial crisis and joined you guys in cabinet. I mean, what was he like to work with?
We're living in a time of what feels like pretty significant social change, and it makes us question things that we've even taken for granted for decades. And one of those at the moment that people are wondering about is actually money. Is the money in your bank account safe? Should you be investing elsewhere? Are we looking at a potential global crash? What will it mean for your savings? Is there a way that you could be using your money that might be outside of government control even? Well, TallyMoney is potentially one solution. So I'm delighted to say that I'm joined today by the CEO and founder of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. What is TallyMoney?
Well, at TallyMoney, you basically get gold you can spend. So we give people an individual account in their name, everyday account. They get a sort code, an account number. They use that account just like they would pounds from their bank, but it's milligrams of gold that we brand as Tally.
Okay. Why would you do that, though? What is the benefit to the customer instead of just having a normal pound sterling account?
Gold's performance against the pound is above 11% per annum over the last 25 years on average. But we still need money in our daily lives, and we have savings. We know that it's good common sense and prudent to save up for things, not just live in credit. You know, whether it's a holiday or a rainy day, your retirement planning, you need to have money in your life, basically, that you can rely on, that's dependable, that nobody meddles with, that nobody can weaponise against you, which is another element of government control when it's the government currency, which we could talk about another time. And it should be pretty simple and straightforward, and that's what we deliver at Tally. And really, we just want people to feel safe and happy with their money. There was a time when the bigger your bank balance, the more confident you felt. Now it's like, I need to do something with it. I can't leave it there. In Tally, you can.
Okay, brilliant. Cameron Parry from TallyMoney, thank you so much.
Thank you, Bev.
Well, I've known Peter for 35 years or so. I first came across him in 1989 when I was working in television. You've got to remember Peter's reputation. I mean, the clue is in the title, Prince of Darkness. Peter had a reputation for brilliance. He helped bring the Labour Party out from the Michael Foot years under Neil Kinnock, rehabilitated it.
Which he did.
He did a huge amount of extraordinary work. And that doesn't take away from the fact that I think he's had one monumental series of lapses of judgment in these last few years, which completely discredit him, and he's now helping the police with their inquiries. So from one extreme to another. The Peter I got to know was the Peter the second time after he was sacked by Tony Blair. I've always felt rather sorry when somebody is in a bad way, and it doesn't really matter what party you're in, if someone's in a bad way. And he was in a bad way. He was fired. It was very difficult. He needed friends, and I was around. And I don't regret helping him back in 2001 and 2. I feel a little sore by the way that once he had, as it were, got back into the European Union, I almost became a person he didn't remember. We did remember each other when Gordon Brown brought him back into the government. And I kind of thought, well, you know, this is going to be exciting. He's very smart. He's very clever. This could bring a lot to the government. But we would monumentally fall out in 2009. And this was all over the Chilcot inquiry. I was absolutely wedded to Gordon Brown's decision that it had to be a public inquiry. I've always thought that transparency is the best disinfectant, bring daylight in. And Peter didn't agree. And we had a very major difference of views. It happens that Gordon prevailed. It was a public inquiry, so John Chilcot did his work. But I think Peter didn't really forgive me for daring to cross him. And we managed a perfectly manageable relationship in the last year or so. But I knew that I'd fallen out with Peter, and you know,
but what was extraordinary?
That was it.
Sure, you've had your ups and downs, and they were fine. It sounds like.
Well, this wasn't an up and down. Yeah. This was major. This was, you see, this goes to the heart, really, of the problem we're talking about, because Gordon brought him back. And my point to Peter was, you now serve Gordon Brown. And he made it very clear to me he didn't serve anyone. And what it became very clear to me was that the Peter I'd known had already become very different. I didn't know what was going on in Peter's life. I knew a lot back in 2001.
But there you are in government, and he's lifetime emailing Epstein about all the goings-on, about the fall of Gordon Brown after you'd helped try to put together a coalition to stay in government. Total betrayal.
Oh, he betrayed everybody. Most of all, of course, he betrayed the women and young girls, not by himself doing anything. I didn't believe he did anything with those women. But by keeping Epstein there, by helping him be this power broker of the rich and the powerful and the famous. And actually, anybody who stayed in that house, I never met Epstein, I never went to the house, I never stayed in the house. But I can't believe you could have been in that house
and not realise something,
and not had the kind of feeling that Melinda Gates had, which was once was enough. I mean, look, all of us here are privileged enough to meet a lot of famous people. And, you know, I remember Esther Ranson around Jimmy Savile and saying there's something not quite right here. Yeah. I think with Epstein you would have had there's something not quite right here.
A fundamental misjudgment, huge misjudgment by the Prime Minister. He was already the most unpopular Prime Minister in living memory. How long does he last?
He's in a very, very tricky place. And let's remember when Gordon Brown brought Peter Mandelson back in 2008, Epstein had been arrested for a crime in Florida. But we didn't know what we knew in 2025. The big issues around the Prime Minister are, can he survive given the questions on his judgment? And that is the really big thing here, because this isn't Boris Johnson and COVID, it's not Mrs Thatcher and the poll tax. For heaven's sake, it's a mistaken appointment of an ambassador. But this ambassador, that's important, but this isn't COVID, it's not the poll tax. But the crucial thing is, what it's thrown up is, why did Mandelson manage to defeat the system that any kind of positive vetting would have said, there are too many questions here, we can't appoint them?
Hopefully the inquiry will tell us more on this. I don't know whether it will. So, PM in a tight spot, you heard what I said earlier, definitely gone after May the 7th. In Wales in particular, they're headed for catastrophe. Can he survive till then?
I actually think he could survive a little bit longer, because the problem the Labour Party has got is who in place.
The mechanism.
And there will be one or two people who are not in place who would like to be in place. And just remember that there is one thing the Prime Minister has. He has his finger on a button called a general election. This Prime Minister is showing, you saw it today, and we saw it with John Major at moments too. He's not going to let the bastards bring him down. And I think you need to remember one thing about Keir Starmer, and if you listen to him, there are moments when you can hear a sort of steeliness, the sort of steeliness that we saw in John Major. He's not a party animal. He is here. And when he spoke today, I do believe him, actually. I believe every word he said today. The question is whether he has the credibility to be able to command people in the House of Commons. And if he loses that, you can't do the job.
Well, I think, for a start, I think all this pearl clutching about Peter Mandelson from many people who said, well, it's a brave choice, but we understand why you've done it, because if you're going into the viper's nest of Trump, you need to put a snake in there. There are questions about the vetting and whether it was willfully ignored.
But he knew, Joe, what we know is that he knew that Mandelson had kept in touch with Epstein even after the conviction.
Oh, absolutely. And, I think, and I know you'll think I'm going down a rabbit hole with this, but I think that the problem with Keir Starmer is that he has got a very toxic male, or has had a very toxic male environment. And Peter Mandelson, Sean and I have been around at the same sort of time. You get power. You get a man who is close to power, who becomes the gatekeeper and wants to keep secrets, wants to share those secrets, which is why Mandelson was sending classified information to Epstein. And I think that, was Keir Starmer fully appraised? Was Morgan McSweeney sent?
I think the simple fact that he knew that the relationship had been maintained shows horrendous misjudgment. What do you think? You've seen one or two Tory leaders come and go and prime ministers.
Yeah, but Nigel, you said it was a good appointment.
I didn't want him to be appointed, but once he was, I had to support it because I wanted us to have a good relationship with the American administration, particularly on trade.
Nigel, I think... sadly, I have seen a few Tory leaders go.
We haven't got time for all of them.
And this feels remarkably like that, although it's been in such quick time. It took us, sadly, 14 years to get to that point, and it's taken them less than 14 months.
Which is the remarkable
thing.
It's
absolutely remarkable. And I just disagree with Sean on one thing. I don't think he can actually call a general election because the convention says that can someone command the competence of the House of Commons, there should not be a general election. The King doesn't have to grant it, and indeed shouldn't grant it. Those are the principles that were set down 50 plus years ago. So he can't, he might be threatening it. I agree with that. He's threatening it. But it's a false threat, and I don't think his backbenchers should give in to that. And in fact, if they want to keep their seats, they need to take action.
But it is a little bit like the John Major back me or sack me, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's the analogy being drawn.
There's one thing, Nigel, about the vetting, which I think everybody keeps missing. Everyone keeps thinking that if the vetting had been done properly, they would have discovered how many nights Peter spent in that house and what emails he sent. That isn't how vetting works. What vetting relies on is Nigel Farage says to me, I only went 6 times to that pub. What the vetting establishes from the people you talk to in the pub is, I make it up, but you know where I'm going. Yeah. He's in here every night, and he's the last out. And what they establish is there's a difference between what you're telling people and what the reality is. And what the vetting does is not actually give you a folder that says X, Y, and Z. What it says is there are some questions here about, for whatever reason, somebody doesn't want you to know their real pattern. We don't know what pattern necessarily is. And they are therefore risky because they could be compromised.
One quick subplot to all of this, we're streeting. Many say it was streeting that persuaded Sarwar in Scotland to say Starmer's got to go. Really interesting, just a quick sort of thought on it. Here's a photograph of West Streeting with Mandelson taken a few years ago. There we are. So they've known each other for a long time. But what Streeting does last night is put out a series of WhatsApp messages between him and Mandelson. West Streeting, I fear we're in big trouble here, and I am toast at the next election. We just lost our safest ward in Redbridge to a Gaza independent. It's 51% Muslim. At this rate, I don't think we'll hold either of the 2 Ilford seats. There isn't a clear answer to the question, why Labour? To which Mandelson responds, the government doesn't have an economic philosophy, which is then followed through with a programme of policies. I couldn't understand why this series of tweets was put out, because it doesn't actually distance Streeting from Mandelson or put Streeting in a particularly loyal light. Why did he do it?
He's got it out of the way. This contest is coming. Interestingly,
so get the bad news out now.
He put them out last night. The Met came straight in today and effectively said to everybody else, you are not allowed to put your messages out there until we say it's OK. So what Wes has done is just get rid of it. I think it was actually a very smart move from somebody who knew they were there, knew they would be discovered. People can't now speculate on it, and I think if what we saw yesterday is what there is, it's not that much, really.
No, I agree with you.
It's a smart move. And
Total agreement with Woodward. Well, there you are.
Well, we could build on that.
Thank you for coming in and giving us your expertise from that time. In a moment, we